Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's November 29th, 2015, and this week we're going to do a lesson on the basics behind developing Guitar Legato. And this week's question was sent in from Andre. He's out in the Czech Republic, and he wrote in with this email. I've been working in getting my legato technique together, but I need a few pointers about how to clean up the way I'm switching strings and how to get the phrases to become smoother. Most of the time, I can only get one part of a lick down. When I switch strings, the lines go bad. I am also having a lot of trouble with speed. Can you make a video on developing guitar legato? From Andre in the Czech Republic. Well, thanks for writing in, Andre. You know, in a guitar player's early days of developing legato technique, you can often run into problems with keeping the lines smooth when crossing strings and when building speed. Now, the good news is that there are ways to improve upon these areas, and it doesn't really require a ton of hours to get the ability up to a decent level. Most of the work has to do with three main areas. Now, number one, you've got to have your fretboard hand technique applied properly, and we'll be discussing that. You also have to understand how to get an even legato from string to string in terms of its tone, and whether or not your strength is up to where it needs to be in respect to your hand feeling relaxed. You need to have a very relaxed hand, and at the same time, you need to have the strength there. So in this lesson, I'll be working on ways to improve all these areas and how to finally get legato up to a good level. Well, starting out with developing legato technique, it's really important to establish a good feel for the ability involved with getting the success together for this skill. And, you know, there's more to it than you might think. Of course, you know, there's the obvious side of all this, which is having the finger strength required to do the hammer-ons with some good volume and accuracy. But there's also a connectedness that we have to have with the fingerboard. You know, if you're trying to do a legato run, and you're not getting the volume out of it, you're not having that connectedness to the fingerboard, it's going to sound really weak. I'll try and do it really, you know, sort of a lousy style of it. You know, you can hear, like, if these notes go dead really quickly, then they have no real attack into the fingerboard. Usually one of the first things that's happening is you're using slightly too much of the pad area of the finger rather than using the real tip of the finger. And I grabbed a pencil here because I wanted to demonstrate something. And, you know, the idea is when you play with the pad area of your finger, it's kind of squishy and sort of marshmallow-ish, you know? So it doesn't have a lot of connectedness to the fingerboard. But if you can get it with the tip of your finger, there's a real solid, you know, sort of bone there, you know, the real attack there that you can make onto the guitar fingerboard. It's not the same as missing out on that real tip, harder area of your finger and getting that more pad sort of area. It's a very different feel. So you need that in order to generate the tone off the fingerboard. You know, if you're using the pad, here I'll demonstrate it. Here's the pad of the finger. It's barely anything, you know. Here's the tip. So big difference there. So when you start banging down on the fingerboard with the real tip of the finger, that's gonna really get the connectedness onto the fingerboard, which is what we absolutely have to have. You know, without that solid feel for exactly where we need to hit upon the string and achieve the best tone with the legato, we're going to experience problems with the technique. It's not going to be clean. Sometimes another thing people will do too quickly is crank on the distortion. You know, you need it to practice this because you're going to have to balance out with some muting technique. You know, for the palm of your hand, you're going to have to be doing some muting there to make sure that you don't have unwanted noise that, you know, always creeps in when you got a lot of overdrive and distortion on the amp. So, you know, it's important to practice with the distortion. I'm not saying that it isn't, but you should also have an equal amount of practice time with a clean channel sound like this. I play mostly with a clean channel sound because it's sort of my favorite tone. I play a little bit with distortion now and again, but when I'm practicing things that I know require high technical ability in both an overdriven sound as well as a clean channel sound, I'll 50-50 it. 50% of the time I'll be working on a clean channel, 50% of the time I'll crank on the distortion and the overdrive. So keep that in mind as well, because you need a balance of both to really develop the accuracy, with the sound of the technique. Because man, distortion is so forgiving. You don't have to have all that perfected of a technique with the hammer-ons or pull-offs that you're doing with the legato technique when you're dealing with distortion. I mean, you can be kind of lousy at it and still sound not bad. Other factors to consider too: thinner strings. I use really heavy gauge strings on my guitar. The top string on my guitar is an 11, and I keep really high action. A lot of people who ask me to check out this Strat of mine, they're flipped out by how high the strings are off of the guitar fingerboard. But I just really like the tone of the guitar when I have high action and really a lot thicker guitar strings. It just feels a lot better to me, and it also sounds a lot better to me as well. Now, of course, for most people trying to do legato for the first times, you probably don't want to have really high action and really thick, strings. You probably want to have a much lower action and go with some thinner strings, maybe a set of 9s or something. Or if you really like the slinky feel, you could try 8s, but it's up to you. You have to experiment with string gauges until you get to a gauge that you like. I played with a 10 on the first string for a long time, and then eventually, I don't know when, maybe it was some period around the mid 90s or so, I switched over to using 11s, and I've never gone back. So you have to sort of think about that too when you're working on your technique. The thinner the gauge of guitar strings and the closer the action is to the guitar fingerboard, the easier it will be to generate this legato idea as well. So let's move on to the first example here. I've got a great legato warm-up idea. Here's how this concept sounds. It goes like this. We have a pull-off from 11 to 7, and then a hammer-on that takes place into the 9th fret, so like this. And then what we're going to do after that is move up again into the 11th fret of that 3rd string, and that's going to be the complete workout idea. So we have a pull-off, 11 to 7, just to recap, 11 to 7, hammer-on to 9th, and then hammer-on again to the 11th. So that's going to be your first exercise idea. You can turn on a metronome, get good in one area, and then maybe even try and start moving it over to other strings. You can move to other positions. So experiment with it around the guitar. You can get it all over the place and kind of get used to it. And then what we're going to do after that is move on here to a drill that's going to be adding in a string cross. So just take your time with this one because crossing strings can be a bit of a challenge at first. So it's going to still employ that first one that we did, and then it's going to go over to the 4th string and have a hammer-on from 7 to 11, and then back to 7, and then into 9, and then into 11. Okay, so the first one, and then, all right, so start off with those, play them all over the guitar fingerboard. One thing, before we move on to some other idea, I want to move on next section of this lesson to some 16th note triplet ideas. But before we move on to that, I want to make one more statement in the beginning, getting started stuff here in respect to hand pain or tension or just to feel like your hand is starting to kind of ache a little bit or something. Really watch that. Be careful, about that, because if you start experiencing hand pain and, because just from overuse and you don't do anything about it, just keep pushing forward like that, you get some kind of silly attitude like no pain, no gain or something like that. That's not good. Do not push yourself when you're getting a painful, hand from doing these kinds of techniques. This is really strenuous work on the hand. So if it starts to hurt a little bit, and even if it starts to hurt after 2 or 3 or 4 minutes when you're first starting this stuff, just take a break, get away from it, go and do something else, grab a glass of water or something, get something to eat, come back. Spread out the work of this stuff through the day. Try it a little bit in the morning, try, in the middle of the afternoon, try it in the evening, but never push yourself on this stuff, because if you start getting some pain, a lot of times that can lead to tendonitis, and you do not want to have that creep into your life, because it sucks, and it lasts for a long time usually, and it can last for upwards of 3 months there. So, and getting away from it can be a big problem. So avoid it like the plague. Anyway, we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to start discussing some 16th note triplet ideas. All right, next I want to look into a drill that will start getting some speed flowing along here. And to do this, we're going to shift gears into the use of 16th note triplet patterns. This run is going to take place between the 3rd and 2nd strings, and it's going to involve the notes of the C sharp minor scale. It's a fast run, so be very clear on what's going on with the notes themselves, as well as the fingerings being applied, and, of course, the way the line feels. Remember that, you're not just building finger strength here when you're practicing this stuff. You're building the memory in the fingers of your hand for how it feels to generate the best attack. And that's the biggest thing to try and work on when you're developing your legato technique in the beginning. You want that correct attack, So what's happening here is with this run, we're going to be in the top region of C sharp minor scale. We're going to be traveling 12, 10, and 9. And then we're going to drop down off the 3rd string, 11, 9, and 8. So we've got 12, 10, 9, double pull off. And then we're going to shift strings and do another double pull off to go 11, 9, 8. Now, of course, this is a descending idea. You can easily flip it to go ascending. Okay. Or reverse. Another thing you could do with it is kind of another neat way to approach it is you could go down 3 notes here with the double pull off, do a single pull off on the 11th to 9th of 3rd string, and slide to switch over to the next note. So you can have that idea, or you could have the double pull offs. You can barely tell the difference of them though, really. Just super similar. So always watch for that, experiment with that when you're developing the approach of your legato stuff, because some of them can be approached as slides, some of them can be approached as hammer-ons or pull-offs or whatnot. Now in the next drill, what I'm going to do here, still using pretty much the same notes and same approach in the first half, is we're going to do that double pull-off concept again from 3rd string into the 2nd string, or the second string into the 3rd string. And then we're going to move forward, have a hammer-on that's going to be a little slower. It's going to be 8th notes. And then we're going to move down into the 4th string. So what we're doing, you probably caught on to this right away, we're moving into yet another string down in the scale. So this one is going to move in an ascending double hammer-on. So we're going 7, 9, 11. And then we're going to do a tap with that left hand to generate that last note. So let me work through this slowly for you. All right. So when you're coming into the 9 and the 11th frets, those are the E and F sharp tones on the 3rd string, you can pick that note again. You're going to get a lot more volume out of it if you do. Or you could hammer it, a direct hammer-on, and do the other hammer-on with the ring finger. So index finger hammering first, the ring finger coming as a secondary idea. All All right, so experiment with that. It's kind of an interesting idea, and sometimes, you know, tapping onto another guitar string is going to be a more favorable approach. Other times, you know, it might not be the best sound, and you will want to do more of a, you know, pick attack with your right hand, actually coming in there and picking the string. You can hear it's louder than just the tap itself. So there's the pick. Here's the tap just with the finger. Sorry. There you go. So, okay, here it is again. Oh, you know what I was doing there? I was doing the slide. So there's the double pull-offs. See how easy it is to, you know, go mix these together. Okay, here's again. I'll pick that note on the 9th fret. All right. You can even pick the last one if you want to really generate a lot more tone, a lot more punch out of that. Well, anyway, you know, the ways that you approach playing these ideas could be just limitless, you know, and, you know, the more strings you add in and the more directional control you start generating, where you're doing some hammer, some pull-off ideas, some individual taps just with the finger itself, and then, you know, still there's the picking aspect of, you know, coming in there to get a louder attack as well. It's really a fun technique to practice. Watch out for that pain stuff. You know, if you get some pain, take a break. Do not play with pain ever. And just keep experimenting with, you know, bridging these things out further and further, experimenting with more strings. You know, you can do a lot of work with these. They're a super cool sound, and when you add on the distortion, if you're playing some rock and you really want to get a fast, flashy sound, this is a fantastic way to do that. You know, when we're practicing the drills here in this lesson plan, you'll want to not only focus on building ways that involve the fretting hand technique and the skill for developing speed with legato. When you're practicing these different kinds of drills we have here, you need to pay a lot of attention to the feel of the attack upon the string and on keeping your hand very relaxed. With good accuracy developed and with, you know, the more relaxed feel that you have, you're going to be absolutely beginning to have an easier time playing through these legato licks. But, you know, one thing I need to end on is the use of a metronome. Now, you know, the steady click of using a metronome will go a really long way in helping you to have an excellent control with your playing that'll grow to be very automatic for you, as well as help you integrate the performing of legato runs into your personal style of playing. Anyhow, that's about all the time that I have for today. As always, I want to say thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and if possible, consider a small donation to help fund the Guitar Lessons project here. Otherwise, have yourself a really great week, and I will catch up with you next time. Bye for now. I'd like to take a moment to mention another guitar video lesson project I've started. It's a unique guitar lesson approach that I'm doing online, and it's not like anything I've done before. Best of all, it's 100% free. I've called this approach Guitar Micro Lessons, and they're a great way to learn a few new licks or riffs or chord shapes each week. Now, these Guitar Micro Lessons are quick and easy to learn from. They're very short, with each lesson running between only 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes in length. They're published to YouTube from Monday to Thursday on my other Guitar Blog Update YouTube channel, and you can either subscribe to that channel to guarantee getting each new episode, or just visit the channel whenever it's convenient for you and check out the new micro lessons in the playlist on the Guitar Blog Update channel's homepage. The Music Reading Phase 1 ebook has over 30 pages of comprehensive project lessons covering the entire fifth reading position on the guitar. Music reading charts and drills will work to help students memorize the placement of the fifth position notes, including important sharp and flat tones. Several original and classic pieces of sheet music will help students to gain a solid understanding for this region of the neck. Rhythm studies, duration examples, plus song and location drills along with 19 MP3 audio tracks makes this one of the best music reading courses available online. Music Reading Phase 1 is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com.